Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to our work session this evening. I am calling it to order. Dr. Watts, would you go ahead and begin?
Absolutely. Thank you, President Daniels. And at this time, I would like to introduce our Chief Accountability Officer, Dr. Jewel Harmon, to begin our work session presentation. Dr. Harmon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, President Daniels, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Dantello. Our work session this evening is the culmination of several communities and pretty much all of KSD to plan our spending for next school year. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Rarick to start the financial portion of the work session, and then we will transition to other community partners who participated in this work throughout the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Feels like it was just yesterday. Well, in fact, it was just yesterday. Let me do a quick transition to sharing my screen. Are we seeing that okay? Great. So it's my pleasure to walk us through the materials for work session number 3. In addition to this discussion here this evening in our work session, the board meeting does include a public hearing on the budget. This is just a reminder to the board members that by law, we're only required to do one public hearing, but out of a desire to have transparency and an abundance of opportunity to weigh in, this year we are doing 2. So you might have seen the advertisement in the newspaper for tonight's, and then of course we have the same budget hearing that we would typically have at budget adoption at the end of August. So this evening, I'd like to talk about 5 major groupings of what constitutes the district's initial budget proposal. The first is a kind of a grounding in our budget values and priorities as a district. The second is a discussion of enrollment, a discussion of revenues, both in terms of kind of how we're doing this year and then what the budget looks like next year. And then the same, of course, for expenditures. And then additionally, I have a slide that speaks to future year considerations. I should also note that towards the middle portion, I'm going to be handing the presentation off to Dr. Berenger and the Human Resources team. And there's a set of about, I don't know, 5 slides or so where they're going to walk you through some of the key staffing decisions that are at the heart of this budget proposal. Okay. So this year, as we do every year, frankly, we try to ground our budget in a couple key things. One of them is our key values as a community. And in each case, I think you'll see very definitely a focus on equity in this proposal. Many aspects of the budget that also advance excellence and also community. And rather than list them now, I think I'll try to pull those out as we talk about them in subsequent slides. But I wanted to convey to the board members that that is an important part of the process, and those are connections that we try to make throughout. Okay. And in that same line of thinking, Dr. Herman, I think went through several exercises with you as board members, and I think last year it was board member Hamada that was asking for us to think about different ways that we could tease out how the values that are expressed by the community and the board members are reflected in the budget. So I've taken a shot at that this year in this matrix. Of course, this is not every priority that was expressed. Some are broader than others, some more specific, some overlapping. But these are ones that I felt like we could very specifically tie to key attributes in the budget, either in terms of non-salary purchases or in terms of the staffing, which you'll be hearing about later this evening. First of all, one board member wrote about the desire to eliminate student fees for courses and materials. I'm proud to say that this is probably the first time I've been here that we've done a truly deep, comprehensive look at all the fees. And perhaps later this week, early next week, we'll be rolling out essentially an entire new framework for fees. There's a lot of nuances and dimensions to it, but just to basically say that if we offer a class in the Kent School District, from here on out, we will no longer be charging students for anything that we consider to be necessary to succeed in that class. And I feel like that's a good place to be. Over time, sometimes in large organizations, decentralized decisions, you lose some of your coherence in these sorts of things. And this has been an excellent opportunity to reground ourselves in our core values, right, of excellence, equity, and community. Another board member wrote about mental health program supports for students. There are very specific things in this budget to advance that, a couple being that as a district now, we are committed to providing a social emotional related training to our staff on an every other year basis. And additionally, this budget contains an increase for direct, I want to use the correct terminology here because I'm not a content expert, but direct mental health supports to students, where for years we have kind of had more of those supports in the secondary realm, and we're trying to provide an equal level of support at the elementary level, and this budget makes advances in doing that. Another board member asked about direct funding for classrooms, as I think you'll hear Dr. Behringer and his team talk about. This budget does support lower class sizes, and there is also, as you'll see later, an increase in the non-salary allocations that are going to schools. A board member expressed concern about clean and sanitized schools. I think that's a concern that was actually shared by more than one board member. There are very specific cost centers that have increases, mostly in the maintenance, facilities, and grounds crews, where they need extra budget capacity to do what they need to be able to do to prepare for school opening so that our schools are clean, safe, sanitized, and in line with all COVID protocols. Career and college counselors was something you mentioned. There is in fact an increase in the number of positions. I believe they're referred to as career center specialist positions, and that is an increase in this budget. Dr. Behringer may wish to touch on that later. Before and after school programs. This is appears in several places in the budget, but I expect that it will be one of the areas of advancement in terms of using our ESSER dollars. The district is still working on a couple of the aspects of this proposal, but as you've seen in terms of the advances we've made for summer school, it is our plan to kind of match with the plan submitted to OSPI to address what I think Member Bento refers to as learning acceleration in all the ways that we can do that beyond the regular school day. We'll talk a little bit about ASB supports later on. There's a dedicated slide to it, but as we know, those programs do have a funding challenge going forward, and we have a plan for addressing that. And finally, one board member was concerned about providing meals to students. And this is the year, and I think maybe this might be even the month, that we make application to the state for renewal of our CEP program, which would mean that more of our schools throughout the district have the opportunity to provide meals free of charge to those students. Okay.
Hey, Ben.
Yes, ma'am.
Before you move on, I wanted to add a few others that may show up that may not be seen explicitly here, but are part of the new positions that were added. So translators for staff in our top in 3 additional languages on staff. Permanent full-time is what we're trying to hire. Additionally, adding an auditor for the district, separate and outside of the finance function. And so there are other positions that may not show up explicitly just in the overview of the budget, but those are pieces that were also added. So just want to talk about those as well.
Sure. Because there was a lot of interest in board members' student fees, wanted to break out one slide and talk about kind of the 5 core tenets of our student fee policy going forward. The first is that what we're telling schools is not that we can't have any fees at all, because there are in fact certain situations where fees are appropriate under the law, and in some cases required. But our mantra is going to be that we avoid them if possible, and they're equitably established if they're truly necessary. And this is going to become more of a district-wide effort, whereas I think for many years, schools had different practices that didn't necessarily gel across our entire organization. So this is an exciting opportunity to advance some of our equity goals district-wide in this regard. KSD classes, whether core or elective, will be free of basic fees. That was, I think, one of the myths that I ran into along the way, that if a student, or if a class is not required, somehow it had a different status as to our ability to charge a fee for it. They're all public school classes, and students need to have equal access to all public school classes. As a function of the new law, of course, ASB activities must offer a waiver of fees for students who are low income. And the ASB fees, remember, our ASB program is really a student-led program, and the district tries to respect that boundary. And so it's appropriate for the student leadership to have a discussion and make decisions about the fees that they're going to charge. But as the district, we're going to challenge them to think about an equity lens and think about what other schools are doing as part of their process. And then finally, all fees must be approved. This is not a school level decision. These are not individual teachers that get to decide what fee they're going to charge. That we're going to make this part of a coordinated effort across the district. Okay. Another part of this budget is the opportunity to strengthen co-curricular activities, in part because of that emphasis in ESSER. So I think a foundational belief is that school clubs and activities are an important, significant way for students to rebuild connections with their school community after COVID. And unfortunately, you know, as we've talked about this new law, I hope I've been very clear that the law is very laudable. I mean, we all understand the, you know, the basic goal of the law to remove barriers. Unfortunately, what that means for ASB programs is that they have tighter restrictions in terms of how they can raise money, when they can raise money. And the school districts are not necessarily free to just transfer money to the ASB fund. I mean, it's a separate fund for a reason. So we've had to be creative and thoughtful about how we can support these programs. So as you'll be hearing later, we are providing additional support to student activities in our schools next year in light of this change. Not only, you might remember last year we talked about we weren't going to charge for ASB cards during that last year's abbreviated pandemic year, where we really were only able to have student activities for a certain portion of the year. And we have extended that support and then provided additional, and that is in concert with the fact that our ASB programs will be able to start charging ASB fees to eligible students. So the combination of these factors hopefully will provide enough support to these programs as they make this transition. And we did receive one comment. I just wanted to be real clear that that support that we're providing is not designed to bolster the athletic program solely. That is, in fact, the idea here is that as the district steps up and pays for more of the expenses associated with athletics, that frees funding in the ASB programs to engage in some of the non-athletic student clubs and activities. Okay. Just keeping an eye on our time here, and I'll try to move us through some of these more detailed slides, but this gives you at least an initial overview of some of our executive leaders on the, you know, on the teaching and learning side that have the expertise that I don't have. I've been really thinking about a kind of a conceptual framework for how to advance our excellence using ESSER dollars over the next 3 years. And so the framework of recovery, re-engagement, and acceleration, and what that means for 3 related but kind of independent sets of investments in our system is guiding our work right now. It's not complete, but I think you'll start to see phases of it. Certainly lots of it reflected in this budget and more to come. But certainly points of emphasis include opportunities for credit recovery, expansion of summer school, which we've worked very hard on in the last couple of months to get that up and going, advancement of extended school day and year opportunities, the opportunity to explore, like, what does virtual learning look like in Kent School District post-pandemic? You know, all districts are kind of thinking that through, as there may be many students and families who find that they prefer that venue when they once forced to engage in it. Social emotional learning being a very important part of this, the re-engagement and student transition strategies. And then finally, there's an opportunity to really make investments in our curriculum and our programs at this time, through arts programs, high dosage tutoring, making sure that our curriculum is up to date. And so I hope that gives you at least an initial conceptual framework of how thinking is going in terms of a multi-year plan for investments of ESSER dollars. Just prior to getting into some of the staffing, I want to ground you in kind of where we're at financially as a district. And you've seen these 2 slides before. I think they're 2 slides that really kind of distill things down. This is the follow the bouncing ball slide that basically shows you, as we move through the year, where are we collecting more revenue than we are spending, or vice versa, right? So what's interesting to me here, and I watched this slide very carefully, this is probably the most important slide to me, is you'll see that after years, as you know, you look at your green, your yellow, several years there where we were collecting considerably more revenue than we were spending, because remember, we didn't have a fund balance, right? It doesn't seem all that long ago. Now we've corrected a bit now, and we're frankly right about where I want to be. I would expect that green line to continue to be lower than the blue line. And what that means is our trajectory is roughly spending what we're taking in. Okay, and that is, you know, give or take, that's where we want to be. So a really interesting year in the sense that we took a big hit on the revenue side because we lost enrollment, but we also did not spend a lot of the money that we would typically spend because we weren't in a bricks and mortar environment. And then this is the amount of fund balance by month over the years. You know, previously we had a 4th line in here where we showed you for some of the newer board members, there were years where we were negative in certain months, and in one year we ended negative. But it seems a long while since. Now we're in a very healthy position. But the thing you can see with the blue line there is that the relationship of where we start in September to where we're at in May, you see it's starting to flatten out, right? As opposed to kind of a much more geometric shape there with the gray and the yellow years, meaning that we're starting to level out revenue to expenditure. Okay. I'd like to take an extra moment on this slide because it is the one piece of information that is later breaking that we haven't spoken about, and that is that enrollment did not come in as I was expecting. And so it's worth noting here for a moment. So what you see here are years 16, 17 through 19, 20, kind of in the above reaches of the graph there, your blues and your greens. And then what you see in the red dotted line is current year. My hypothesis, which turned out to be incorrect, was that we would see a leveling out or even get back some of our students as we reintroduced in-person instruction. And that in fact did not manifest. So what you're going to see in subsequent slides is that as we talk about enrollment projections for the following year, as our current year number gets pulled down a little bit, it seems a little more aggressive now than it did the last time we talked. And that's what you see here. So what you see in the left columns are 18-19, 19-20, and 2021 actuals, right? So at this point now, we're projecting in the budget that you have before you, we'll project to get about 397.97 kids back, like a bounce back. Now, remember this graph a couple months ago, it was more like 250 range, right? So we did start to lose students there in the late spring and early summer. And I don't know what that portends for September, but that is certainly the most significant next event for the district fiscally is what does enrollment look like in the first week of school when we come back. Okay, speaking to the direct investments to schools, wanted to make you aware that now we have reinvested in our base materials and supplies allocation to schools such that we are back to the pre-2016 investment levels in schools. You can see we've increased now since the 17-18 year over 10%. So we have a nice linear progression reflecting the fact that we have additional general fund dollars coming to the district. Okay, and then I have a few slides for here at the end prior to getting into the staffing, which show you some of the big picture. You'll see a revenue slide, and then you'll also see later an expenditure slide. The revenue slide, a couple things I want to point out. Next year, my understanding is we will continue under the federal school lunch waiver. And so you see a large drop in that line called local non-tax, okay? Most of what is included in that line is the meal money, the money we collect for school lunches. But the decision to extend the national waiver under the school lunch program, I think it was a good decision, and that's great for our community. But that's why you see that drop is we won't be collecting the same amount of the money that we would in a typical year. Okay. And we do expect to receive additional funding in our local levy simply because we passed a 2-year local levy that had a stair-step increase in the second year. But just a reminder to the board and the community that this is the last year of that 2-year levy, and there will be conversations and work to do in the late summer, early fall, leading up to going out for our next levy as Camp Public School District. Okay, we have received most of the questions that we've had have been answered with regards to ESSER. Couple key features, as you might recall the last time we talked, some lack of clarity about whether fiscal year 23 or fiscal year 24 is going to be the last year we can expend those funds, and we did finally get in writing that fiscal year 24 will be the last year for ESSER 3. That's very important because it allows us to flatten out and make more sustainable our investments in schools. And the other thing is that the ESSER 3 investment of $57 million, 20% of that must be spent on, and we're using the term learning acceleration. And so as we go through these next couple of years, board members, you may find that we're starting to charge expenses to ESSER 3 before we charge expenses to ESSER 2 in some cases. And the reason for that is there are different requirements for each set of dollars. And for example, our investments in summer school, we're going to want to use to apply to that 20% set aside requirement. Okay. When you receive the budget, this is the difference you will see in staffing. You see 4 lines here. 2 are premised on comparisons of actual, last year actual to this year actual. And then the other 2 are premised on the differences between budgeted. Okay. And what you're going to see is that the budgeted to budgeted staffing is pretty flat. That's a little misleading in the sense that we had a lot more contingent positions in last year's budget than this year's. This year's actually has quite a few more new positions that are anticipated to be filled short term. And you'll also see that in our comparison of actual, we have increased actual staffing from year to year. We're up approximately 40 staff. Okay. At this point, I'd like to hand it off to Dr. Behringer and his team. Wade, are you there?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Good evening, President Daniels, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Antello. Appreciate the opportunity to partner with the budget and finance team throughout the year on a weekly basis, and then more importantly for the presentation this evening regarding our budget FY22 budget and our staffing. I will be sharing the responsibilities this evening with our Director of Human Resources, Ms. Jamie Frazier, and she's going to start off on the first few slides, and then I'll pick up towards the end. And I know that Ben, you've got 3 slides at the end, so if you wouldn't mind continuing to drive through our 4 slides, we'll just let you know. And if you could just advance a slide, that'd be great. That way we don't have to swap out of sharing the screens.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Great, thanks, Ben. Jamie, are you here with us this evening?
I'm here, yes.
Great, thanks, Jamie.
Great, well, thank you and good evening, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Santello. Thank you so much for providing the opportunity to share a little overview of our staffing considerations that went into building the basic education classroom staffing, as well as the building administrator staffing models for the upcoming 21-22 school year. We're going to stay on the slide for a little bit as we walk through the different high-level staffing consideration pieces. The first one that we focused on was working to remove splits across the district in K through 6. We did that where possible, and there is another slide coming along that'll go a little deeper into what that looks like for a 3-year review. So the second item is that we continued using the 1:23 class size ratio for staffing K3 classrooms, and this is to reach that 1:17 district-wide class size funding target. And then for purposes of that, the 1:17 ratio is reviewed district-wide average. So the FTE is factored in for the K3 classroom staffing, as well as other staffing, which are specialists can go into that staffing, as well as our SPED staffing part of that to ratio. So it brings it down to a 1:17 ratio. That doesn't mean that we've staffed our K3 classes at 23. It just means that's where we started at for the staffing model. We have many that are staffed, projected to be staffed below that ratio. For our middle school, we looked at the what we used for the last year ratio of classroom staffing, and we went ahead and lowered that from 1:26 to 1:23 going into the 21-22 school year. This adjustment was made to assist in lowering class sizes, mainly those core classes that have more students in them, as well as to address rotating from PE into health, where health has the lower class size. And so we needed to be able to provide, and it seemed like every year at the beginning of the year, we were providing additional FTE just to address that. So we're trying to get ahead of it this year, and lowering that class size ratio helped to do so. Then for our high schools, a couple more there, sorry. For our high schools, we did add 1.0 FTE for each of the comprehensive high schools, and this was to provide a flexibility in the master scheduling, assist in lowering the class sizes, and provide opportunity to run additional classes such as AP classes or those singleton classes that normally have quite a lower class size and where they may not be able to offer it. So it's just dependent on the unique needs of each building. And then lastly, for our building administrator allocation model, we did add an additional 2 assistant principals at the elementary level, updating the elementary assistant principals from 19 to 21 for going into next school year. And the determination was made based on our building administrator staffing allocation model, and that takes into consideration projected enrollment, programmatic, student, and unique needs of the building as well. And then our second slide. Thank you. So this slide represents the projected increase in basic education classroom staffing for the 21-22 school year. And it's broken down, as you can see, by K3, 4 through 6, and then the secondary level. So the projections for K3 are 25.5 increase projected in FTE for next school year, and then 5.5 for 4 through 6. Some reasons include the split classes, reducing those down, as well as we did add some staffing to accommodate for River Ridge coming in, and then different considerations for the 1 to 17, working to reach that target for the district as well. And then for secondary, the projected staffing increase is 3.1 across the secondary level. So I would say that stayed pretty stagnant going into next school year, with just a small increase there. And then what's not included, as it points out in this, is the categorical staffing, so LAP and Title, ELL and SPED, as well as our music, library, media positions. Those are based on, a lot of those are based on what our classroom staffing is at the elementary level for our PE and music itinerants. So they're still working on that, getting all of those, that staffing settled. And then lastly, the CTE. And then one more thing to keep in mind here is these numbers are based off projections, so they can certainly fluctuate as we go into next school year, as the students arrive. But we do have contingency staffing to address any additional staffing that buildings may need to address class sizes. And then our third slide here. This is where we look at the splits. As mentioned before, we work to remove splits across the district for next school year. And this slide represents a 3-year look back, or 2-year look back, and then going into next year. So as you can see, 1920 and 2021, those are actuals, what we had staffed for K through 6. And then going into 21-22, when we put out staffing in the spring, we had 2 splits built in for next school year. And so the projected splits for next year can change again, depending on enrollment fluctuation and the needs of the buildings. But as you can see, we're projecting a lot smaller number of splits going into next year. And some reasons we would staff a split class for K6 is enrollment. If the enrollment changes, they get a couple more students in one grade level and we go over the class size cap for that grade, we would look at possibly staffing a split there instead of adding an additional teacher. And then addressing building classroom space across the district. So if a building does not have any more capacity classroom wise, we would look at potentially staffing a split if we could address it at that point. And then we would also look at staffing, and that's the 2 that we have here in our dual language buildings, where the non-dual language classroom is smaller, and we could do a split there. So what this chart does not show are our high cap splits that are built on programmatic needs. So the next one is Wade's. And Wade, you're muted.
Thanks, Jamie. We have an opportunity now on our way out of the pandemic and coming into the 21-22 school year, having access to our ESSER dollars, as Ben mentioned earlier, to address some of those re-engagement, recovery, and acceleration opportunities. We had an opportunity this year based on recognizing throughout the remote learning year and then transitioning into our hybrid learning, some unique and needed supports for our schools. We had an opportunity with our ESSER funds to look at adding 23.0 or 23 school success coach positions in our 23 schools that do not have ESSA coaches. So we have currently 17 schools with ESSA coaches, and the other schools did not have a coach, academic support coach, or an ESSA coach to support them in their academic achievement for their students and supporting their staff as well. We had an opportunity with our ESSER funds this year to create a school success coach that'll focus on improving student achievement with all student groups in those other 23 schools that did not have access to an ESSA coach. So this coach would provide support for increasing teacher capacity, closing the gap by implementing research-based instructional and social, emotional, and behavioral practices grounded in student achievement data and aligned to the SIP. And so that's an important piece. We saw the definite need for additional social and emotional supports in our buildings through the pandemic. And so this is one of those ways that we can be very intentional about re-engaging our students through the increase of FTE around school success coaches. So that's an addition moving into the 21-22 school year. And then also, thank you, Jewel, I apologize, school improvement plan, yes. And then also we've added 1.0 FTE to the 6 high schools to support credit recovery and learning loss and acceleration. So back to Ben's slide, slide 7, where it talked about re-engagement, recovery, and acceleration. These 6 positions were requested and justified by our 6 building leaders at the high school level around needing additional support, some FTE to support the learning loss and acceleration. We have a lot of students that are receiving no credits through the pandemic who have struggled academically to be able to continue to be successful in a remote learning environment. And so this provides us an opportunity to create some extended learning opportunities, some before and after school programs to support student learning, and allows our high schools to really spend time and money and effort on addressing those students who struggled through the pandemic. And this is not a one-year thing. Obviously, we have ESSER dollars that are available for the next 3 years. So this is something that we'll continue to utilize in our 6 high schools to support those students and not just a one-shot deal. So over the next 3 years, as we can support all the grade levels as they transition through their high school years. Okay, Ben, I think the next slide's yours.
Sure. So last couple slides, just in terms of pulling it all together, what you are seeing here is obviously more spending proposed next year, mostly driven by very significant effects of ESSER, right? The one thing that we are cognizant of that we've discussed in prior work sessions is the non-permanent nature of the ESSER funding. And how we need to be tactical and strategic in investing in our students in ways that we can sustain over a period of time, and then have a long-range transition plan as well. So the budget before you proposes to spend approximately $14 to $15 million more than budgeted revenue. The thing I would like for the board members to be aware of is that, remember, of course, that when you're doing a budget, it's assuming that you're going to spend every dollar that you budget. And of course, you never do, and you never come close to doing that. So when you see the negative relationship of revenue to expenditure in this budget, take that with a grain of salt. That actual spending and actual behavior in the district is likely to be quite different than that. And you can see that in our history, right? So the last couple of years, the board has adopted budgets that have been roughly similar in revenue expenditure. And then revenue stays pretty close to budgeted, but you have instances of under expenditure for a variety of reasons. And so made a little bit of an adjustment for that this coming year. Okay, and then more as kind of future budget issues that I would suggest that we all keep on the front of our brains here would be the following. First of all, when you get together in August, you'll need to review the 4-year budget outlook, which is the F195F. We have got that basically to the point now where OSPI issues guidance that pretty much puts it in a pretty tight box in terms of what districts really are recommended to do, and we just follow that guidance. So OSPI now has a multi-year tool where they project out our revenues. We basically just copy their projections of our future revenues. And so there's not going to be a tremendous amount of mystery in that document, but just be a reminder that it is part of the process, and you will see that as part of your proposed budget in August. We got a couple of significant things, I would say 3 significant things happening in the fall. from a budget standpoint. The first is that every time we come to the end of a levy, we go through a certification process, certifying amounts and purposes of our new levy. And so you can expect that conversation to accelerate in the early fall. We'll also likely make a bond sale in the fall, and this will be for some of the more tenured board members who this is going back to the 2016 bond sale. This will be the last authorization of sale under that approved bond. And so I believe the amount is roughly $45 million approximately. And that, the board obviously has to be directly involved in that and approve the terms of the sale. And then, of course, enrollment will be watched very closely in the fall. And one aspect of that is kind of the evolution of the delivery of educational services in this state post-COVID, in terms of how many kids come back full-time to the bricks and mortar environment, and how many other types of venues, strategies, environments can we offer students so they still continue to be enrolled in the Kent Public Schools, even though they may prefer a partial or full option of virtual learning. There's a decent segment of the population that has taken to that and is certainly shopping their options as they think about next year. And then finally, big change, I know this is a major issue of discussion with the board, is that, and we mentioned this earlier, I know that the food services team is gearing up for the SEP application, and it could mean quite a few of our schools next year in the CEP program going forward, even an increase in the number that we previously had. So I would expect that application to go in the summer, and I believe it takes effect for the following school year. So this is simply a data table that I wanted to make available to you that shows the revenues and expenditures on the same page. It's more for your reference. And that completes budget work session number 3. The other thing that I wanted to note at the end here is that you may be thinking, well, you didn't show me this or you didn't show me that. There are slides that we had in work session 1 and 2 that I simply don't cut and paste and put in again. And so the links to all 3 work sessions have been provided to you, but I'd be happy to provide them again. The first one, remember, concentrates on priorities and revenues. The second one concentrates on expenditures. And the third one kind of pulls it all together. So if there's information that you're seeking that was not in this presentation, very likely was in 1 and 2. Thank you so much for your attention. And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can or defer to any of the executive leadership to do the same.
Mr. Eric, first of all, thank you for another great report. It all looks very good. We have money and we're spending money where we need to spend money. My goal is to keep it sustainable. And I'm sure that's yours too. First of all, I have a question about the coaches. So we'll have a total of 40 success school coaches, is that correct? With the 23 and the 17?
Director Hamada. So yes, we already have 17 schools that have our ESEE coaches. And those ESEE coaches, once they finish the 21-22 school year, they will transition into school success coaches. So we built a job description that was all inclusive of the needs that schools have identified based on data and their school improvement plans, created then the job description for a school success coach, added them to the 23 schools that did not have ESEE coaches. So all schools would have a coach to support student academic achievement and teacher capacity to help grow that academic achievement in their students. So every single school will have a coach next year, and the following year, every single school will have a school success coach by title as the ESEE coaches transition to school success coaches.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Sort of.
Okay. So every single school will have a coach.
Okay. And I'm wondering if down the road we'll have some kind of a spreadsheet that shows which schools needed what type of success coach or what they're working on in those schools. Do you ever do anything like that to kind of understand where our need is in individual schools?
Yes, that's part of the, when we built, there were several teams within the organization that worked to create a job description for the coaches that can support our schools. And so we worked with our student family support services, our EDLEs, our principals. We worked with our KEA labor management group, or KEA leadership as well, to work through what would an all-inclusive coach look like that could bring a skill set that can focus on social emotional learning, the increasing the teacher capacity as far as coaching teachers up to support students, all students in our classroom around student achievement, to address behavioral needs. And so the idea is behind the hiring of a school success coach is that they have a unique and broad skill set. And depending on the student data or the building data, those success coaches may spend more time in a, say, social emotional type of coaching stance in a particular building because the data says that's where they need to spend most of their time. Or it could be more on the instructional side or student achievement side. But the position was created to have a well-rounded coach that brings a skill set across the board. That way the schools can utilize them based on their student data.
So it'll be kind of could be a multi-hat that they're wearing. Do I hear you saying that?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. I'm wondering with the splits that we have, I think that we're getting it down to about a 1%, and that's really good. I'm wondering if down the road we see tons more kids in certain areas that we see, do we plan on trying to maintain that 1%, or could that probably could go up, or do we have a plan with that? If it's more?
It could
It
go
is
up.
possible. Yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, sorry, go
Jamie.
ahead, Wade. Yeah.
I was just going to say, based on what Jamie had shared, it is possible. I mean, we set it based on projected enrollments. Our goal was to decrease, if not eliminate, splits altogether. As we've been working through and enrollment projections, as Jamie stated, change. They're constantly moving around, and as we get to the beginning of the school year, if we have issues or in the buildings that we see that we have a need where we need to make a split, then that is there. And so that's why Jamie was, in her language, said that, best case scenario is that we don't have any splits, but we also have left the door open. So if we need to have a split, which is not our goal, then we can create a split if that's needed. Jamie, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, and some of those points that I hit on would be reasons for it if we get additional enrollment in, but it may not warrant an additional teacher. That said, we would need to work with the teacher in the union if we had a teacher change an assignment. So we would possibly look at adding an FTE and doing a split to accommodate for both grades. Also, we would look at those buildings with dual language. So we're not looking just to add splits, but that would be an option that we would look at as we're walking through those additional staffing considerations for the buildings, if needed.
Can I understand that, at least in some other schools that I've talked to, the kindergarten kids that were kept home, we might see double the amount of kindergartners this year. When do we have that data to look at our kindergarten? When do they have to sign up? Is there a cutoff on that? The kindergartners coming in?
So kindergarten enrollment's been going on remotely for the last few months through our student family support services. So those numbers are increasing as the spring has gone on. I would say that to have a real clear number would be closer to the beginning of the school year in August. There's a lot of decisions that are made by our families and our community over the summer as the school year ends, and people are making decisions on if they're going to enroll their child in kindergarten or first grade, depending on their age, going into the 21-22 school year. But I can say that we have had a good steady flow of kindergartners enrolling into the Kent School District that maybe have been out last year or took the 2021 school year off and that are now coming back to us.
And
Apologies for interrupting, but we only have 10 minutes, and I know we have other board members that have questions also.
Sure. I'll shut up.
I have questions, so shall I go? I have 3 questions. Thank you. So I'd like to first ask, one of the priorities was early learning and what is happening in our elementary schools to prepare them for rigorous programs like 11th grade IB programs and so forth. So I really appreciated a number of these staffing decisions, like removing splits and possibly going to 1 to 17 for K through 3, staffing for APs in elementary school, et cetera. And also that brief discussion on music and STEM. I guess my question is, I'd like to, in the future budget, kind of see specifically programmatically how we're going to change this budget to reflect support systems in the elementary school level, not just through staff, but program-wise. And then second, I'd like to also understand how the budget will be shown so that it's very clear about ESSER 3 funds being used now for acceleration, how exactly that would be laid out so that we're clear that some of the funding has already been used for this school year and whatever is coming up for future years, it's available and so forth. And then third, I'm interested in the online options for enrollment. It was something that I forgot to mention at the last legislative meeting, our legislative discussion report, my report. And that ALE and continuous learning models, I do believe there's budget for that, exploring that. So I'd really like to see a discussion on that as well in the coming months. Thank you.
I had a question also, thinking about the ALE. I'm wondering, have you begun to get kind of a pulse to see where families would be? I know as we're talking about the options, has there been, and I apologize if this has come out and I haven't seen it, but has there been like a survey or something, or are we beginning to have that conversation to figure out where families are with that, and if we would begin planning something like that for next year?
So we did survey families about our community as a whole, about what learning supports they might feel or would be interested in as we move forward to start planning for ESSER spending. In terms of what ALE specifically, we've looked at what we can provide to extend our learning day, to provide other opportunities, and some of those plans are in the works for after school and other supports very specifically. And we hope, loosely related to Core 24, hoping to have some of those community school programs up and running by second semester, and making some investments there, as well as continuing to explore other options with the state as well to have that in place. And so these things would be initially funded with ESSER, but we'd have sustainability funding in mind so that they would continue beyond our ESSER dollars.
And has there been conversation about an online option for Kent?
Yes, so that's the conversation with OSPI and how we plan to have that happen as well. It will not be in place by this fall in August to start the school year, but we are working with OSPI and we'll bring forward to the board the plan because we have to apply for that and all of that as well. But we are moving forward with that too.
Thank you, Dr. Harmon.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Eric. I always enjoy listening to your presentations. They're so informative. It makes me feel way smarter sitting here listening to you present. So thank you for all your information always in your team. And again, thank you for including the elimination of student fees for courses and materials that were essential. To me, that was really great as far as saying that and looking at schools across the district and looking for consistency. I did have some questions about before and after school programs, because I know childcare instances are challenging for a lot of our families. And I know that's some of the stuff we're going to look at in our reports tonight or in some of our information tonight. Has there been, is that something we're waiting for, is for us to vote on contracts for that? Is there a plan for how many schools will have before and after school programs. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I can elaborate a little bit. So what you're seeing tonight is, I think it's a pretty hefty agenda, but if I recall, we have the summer school contract RFP. So, we're, as I'm sure you're aware, in terms of summer schools, like right around the corner, right? So it has been a blitz to get not only award the RFP, but to find through the RFI process all the other providers. I mean, I think we had 2 RFP winners, but we've got, I think, over 10 community-based organizations partnering with us over summer. I think that's what you're seeing tonight, if my memory is correct. To my knowledge, I don't think there's anything on the agenda that pertains to the after-school programs, which I think is still being built out. And I think there's some key program decisions and discussions that are happening right now in terms of how that's going to look and how that's strategically kind of woven into, the strategic plan. Like what's the 2-3 year look here in terms of, relying solely on community-based organizations, or trying to do this internally, or some combination, or getting some executive leadership in that area, and all of those considerations. So that's, from a budget standpoint, that's all I have to offer at this time.
Got it. So it hasn't been really discussed for next fall yet, or next school year.
I'm gonna go ahead and defer to Dr. Herman on this one.
I'd like to just chime in if I can, Dr. Harmon and Director Benno. I just wanted to share, in addition to what Ben said, that's the only item that tonight is really related to that piece. However, we did, Mr. Heath, through Ms. Santello, did provide the board with a list, a spreadsheet of what schools are doing this summer. And as Mr. Eric shared, as we continue with our recovery plan, we'll be more specific. But at least that gives you some information on what each school is doing, in addition to credit retrieval, ESY, that is happening as well. Just wanted to add that.
Awesome. And can I make an ask? Mostly just because I don't know enough about the district as far as like ASB goes. And I know that we do a lot of funding for athletics. And I know that we said that the budget includes a lot for activities. I'm just kind of curious, kind of like where funds are spent for activities. I don't know if we have like activity coordinators at all the secondary schools. Like if I could just get a little bit more info on how money is spent for ASB and activities, that would be awesome. It doesn't need to be answered specifically. An email will do at any point, but I'm just curious because I don't know.
Will do.
And this, I think I have a couple minutes. Real quick, I would echo what Director Vengadaswaram said about the programs. This is great. And I did see Mr. Heath's spreadsheet too. Thank you for all the pre-information. My question when we're talking about after school programs and before school programs is transportation. Are we considering activity buses, things like that?
So we are, and one of the things that we didn't talk about that relates to Director Benno's question as well, schools will have the opportunity to apply for ESSER, we're calling them mini grants, where they will have access to dollars and resources to provide the supports that are specific to their schools, communities, and programs. And that could include transportation if that's part of what their robust program is.
Other questions? We've got about 2 minutes.
I always have more questions.
Got 2 minutes.
I'm going to be quick there. I'm wondering if it's possible that we could see some type of a plan if we're 5% higher or 5% lower on the kids that show up. If we've got a plan and some ideas about that, that's just something I want to plant in there for the future to look at. If we're making any adjustments on what are we going to do? What is our philosophy on that? Where do we want to change? And what area do we value to change in, lower or upper, if we were off by, 5% higher, 5% lower, whatever. That's just a statement.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think once we adopt this budget, that's probably there will be nothing more important to me as the fiscal officer than basically that exactly in terms of like September, October, and understanding what our new reality is in terms of student counts, and having a collaborative conversation with HR about where that puts us. So absolutely, we'll be doing that anyway. So it's certainly appropriate to have that conversation.
I just want to make a comment. Thank you for this great report. I mean, this has been wonderful.
Great, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Harmon and team. Dr. Behringer, thank you so much for the presentation. At this time, we are going to adjourn for an executive session. We are going to discuss the qualifications of an applicant for public employment and to discuss with legal counsel representing the district litigation or potential litigation to which the district is likely to become a party. Thank you. All right, good evening. It is 7 p.m. and I'd like to call our board meeting to order this evening. Vice President Bettinger, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. I'd like to welcome our audience to our meeting this evening. Director Hamada, would you please read our land acknowledgement?
Yes, we acknowledge we are gathered upon the ancestral lands of the Muckleshoot Indian tribe, who historically lived throughout the area between the Cascade Mountains and Puget Sound.
Thank you so much. Dr. Watts, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, President Daniels, thank you. A supplemental personnel report, please note, has been added to the consent agenda, and agenda item 8.07 is being removed due to a change in the scope of work by Carriage Crest, resulting in an expenditure that is below the threshold required for board approval.
Wonderful. Can I have a board member make a motion?
I move we approve the corrections to the agenda.
I second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the changes to the agenda as so stated, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Two of you are muted, just so you know. So Director Benno and Director Hamada. All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, we are on to the process for audience participation. Welcome again. This is a meeting of the Kent School Board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. The purpose of the board meetings is for the board to conduct its business in public. During the meeting, the board will listen to, but not respond to comments from the audience. Those wishing to comment must complete the online form as indicated on the district website and in BoardDocs. Tonight, there will be two periods which public comment will be heard, at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. Questions raised through submitted public comment addressing an issue may require further investigation, and staff may contact you to follow up. If you indicated a desire to speak to an agenda item, your comment will be read at that portion of the agenda. General comments tonight will be read during the audience communications sections of the agenda. Ms. Santello, do we have any comments for this evening?
Yes, good evening, President Daniels, members of the board, Dr. Watts. There are a total of 3 comments submitted for this evening's meeting. 2 I will read during this first section, and the 3rd will be read during 8.01 superintendent contract.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome. The first comment is submitted by Paul Sayan. Good evening. I am Paul Sayan, general music teacher at Jenkins Creek Elementary School. I've been recently involved in a project led by the Washington Music Educators Association in lobbying the state legislature to adopt laws requiring minimal contact minutes with highly qualified music teachers for our state's elementary school children. It would appear to me, with exception of one of our elementary schools, that Kent is heads and tails well above other districts in this area. Furthermore, the hiring of an extremely talented fine arts coordinator, Dr. White, illustrates this district's commitment to the quality of life for our students, even after the completion of their vocations. The 50 minutes twice a week has allowed me, even after 34 years of experience, to teach to a level I didn't think possible. I would encourage our board members to explore the works of Dr. Nina Kraus, PhD. She is a neurologist and armature musician who has done some extraordinary studies, brain growth, and music education. Here is the website, www.brainvolts.northwestern.edu. Thank you, board, for your strong support for music education and our kids. Paul E. Sayan, Jenkins Creek Elementary School.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The second comment for this preliminary communication is from Lisa Templeton. Dear members of the board, with the recent expansion of the experimental Pfizer COVID-19 injections to children between the ages of 12 and 16, I wanted to reach out and ask the board to ponder how they can help ensure parents' right to informed consent or refusal on behalf of their children with respect to school attendance, in light of the fact that many institutions are violating the federal emergency use statute and mandating the shots. Many parents are concerned to learn that these shots are not fully licensed by the FDA, that the manufacturers bear no liability for deaths and injuries, and that testing was limited to about 2,300 children in this age group for a median of 2 months. Our children's risk of serious illness or mortality from the infection is statistically zero, but these investigational biologics pose a substantial risk, both short-term and long-term. In addition, aborted fetal material was used in the testing of this product, which poses a moral consideration for many. In the event that Washington State attempts to coerce this medical intervention upon our school children, I am wondering how our KSD board can support its families in defending their right to informed consent. Thank you.
That concludes our comments for this portion, right?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. All right, we are on to agenda item 3.0, our superintendent report. Dr. Watts.
Yes, thank you again, President Daniels, members of the board, our team, certainly Ms. Antello, thank you. Just to note, as of our 2020-2021 school year, it seems as though we've just started. We are also on the heels of the end of our 2021 school year. This also happens to serve as my 6th year as Kent School District Superintendent, proudly served since June 15th, 2015. This year is drawing to a close, however, and I am honored to celebrate and recognize some of the outstanding accomplishments that have occurred during this school year. So once again, I want to congratulate our budget and finance team, including Mr. Rarick and Ms. Lisa Tyler, budget supervisor, our organizational effectiveness community in their entirety, and our entire team KSD for doing all that we need to do to remain fiscally solvent and financially sound and responsible. In fact, at a special meeting of the Kent School District Board of Directors on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021, audit managers from the Office of the Washington State Auditor shared their September 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2020 financial audit results. For the fiscal year 2020, there were no findings from the accountability audit, no findings from the financial and federal audit, and 4 exit recommendations were reported. Now, exit item recommendations are informal recommendations that align with best practice or correct control deficiencies. Now, as a learning organization, we take exit items very seriously. And though not all districts share this information publicly, particularly during the time of pandemic and continued and sustained scrutiny, I have continued to witness our budget and finance team's commitment to our district's fiscal health and sustainability for the benefit of each and every student. Now, a commitment in which I never had doubt that we would make perfect progress. Now, I'm incredibly proud as well of what we have accomplished, and I am confident that Team KSD will continue along this path of financial health and fiscal solvency. Now, speaking of Team KSD, we recognize that our last day of school is this Friday, June 25th. And I want to take this opportunity again to once again thank our nearly 4,000 staff members for all that has been accomplished this school year. Whether you teach in Kent School District or support those who teach in Kent School District, you are vital to the success of each and every student in our district. And I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you, Team KSD, for all you've done, and more importantly, all you'll continue to do for our students, our staff, our families, our entire district, and our community. Now, it is my sincere hope that all our Kent School District families and staff members can take some time with their students to pause and reflect on the year behind us and celebrate the work that has been accomplished, the learning that has taken place, and to honor our students as they move forward toward their next steps in educational progress. For our elementary school students, this may include promotion from preschool to kindergarten or 6th grade to middle school. For our 8th graders, it is that pivotal transition towards high school. And finally, I want to again congratulate our Kent School District class of 2021. I enjoyed seeing you celebrate last week at our individual ceremonies, and I look forward to what our future holds because of you. While I do hope our entire Kent School District community enjoys at least some rest, some relaxation, and some rejuvenation this summer, we must also recognize it as a learning organization and as the 5th largest and 2nd most diverse school district in Washington State, our work is never done. Now, a total of 41 summer learning and support programs will begin Monday, June 28th at 35 of our schools, offering various supports and services throughout the summer. Current Department of Health guidance is available now for summer learning and next school year as well. At this time, according to Public Health, beginning Monday, June 28th, the wellness screener will cease for students and adults. All staff and students are required to wear face coverings indoors or outside, whereas 6-foot distancing cannot be maintained regardless of vaccination status. 6-foot distancing, other than in the classroom, is to be maintained to the degree possible. Hand washing, isolation room, contact tracing protocols, and cleaning protocols still remain in place. Vaccinations continue to be available at no charge for anyone 16 years of age and older. The vaccine is not required for any students or adults attending or working in public schools in Washington State. However, we will continue to update families and staff as guidance changes and as we get closer to the start of the 21-22 school year. Now, our first day of the 2021-22 school year is August 26th, just 9 weeks from tomorrow. And we look forward to welcoming all students in all grades back into our buildings full-time this upcoming fall. I look forward to meeting our new leaders and our staff in person. With that, I want you to please continue to check your email, check your mail, check your text messages, school and district website, and our mobile app all summer long for news and updates, including information about safety protocols in the new school year. Stay positive, stay curious, stay healthy, and please remember to stay safe and have a great summer. I greatly appreciate your attention this evening. President Daniels, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Watt. All right, we are on to our legislative update. Director Vingadaswamy.
Yes, thank you. I have a very brief report. First, just I forgot to mention at the previous board meeting on the options, OSPI is offering options for instructional funding models. And as we heard Director Rarick talk about this evening about the different funding models, I just wanted to kind of elaborate on that. There's a continuous learning model, which is really flexibility to serve students with health and safety needs that may limit their in-person instructions. So there is that option, and there is also the alternative learning experience, what we call ALE, and it's a program of basic ed where courses or grade level coursework provided in whole or in part away from the regular classroom settings or schools. So those are some things that are available, and I'm hoping to hear more about those options and what that means budgetarily as well. And then I don't have much, as I said, we continue to meet as a board of board members of color with WASDA on designing a framework to look at attracting and recruiting board members of color and supporting all board members. And we are in the process of defining what are the barriers and outcomes that we want to see, and prioritizing what are the important concerns that should come to the forefront. And all of this is being designed right now, so it's in draft form, and we're not able to share everything at this point, but stay tuned on that. And I just would like to extend to any of our board members who are, I know several of you are very savvy with legislative priorities. If you'd like to add any information, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vingadaslam. Excuse me. All right, we're on to 5.0, our recognitions. And Director Benno, would you please read our Pride Month recognition?
Yes, thank you. We have a proclamation from Governor Jay Inslee about Pride Month. Whereas Washington State recognizes that one of its greatest strengths is the diversity of its people, and whereas Washington State has longstanding tradition of upholding the dignity of the individual, supporting legal equality and faith treatment for all people, and ensuring that acts of discrimination and hatred will not be tolerated. And whereas members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, queer, two-spirit, and intersex communities, or LGBTQ, contribute to our state's success and strengths in a great number of immeasurable ways. And whereas this year we celebrate 30 years since Washington State, through Executive Order 91-06 by Governor Booth Gardner, first prohibited discrimination based on sexual orientation in public employment. And whereas the LGBTQ community continues to be a target of violence, harassment, and discrimination by many, and yet continue to thrive through the efforts of the community itself and through the support of LGBTQ plus affirming spaces, agencies, and individual allies. And whereas discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity is often compounded with the discrimination on the basis of race, immigration status, religion, disability, and age, among others. And whereas the nationwide trends continue to highlight the targeting and discriminate against members of the LGBTQ community, Washington State continues to lead in affirming the lives and values of LGBTQ individuals through such actions such as the passage of Gender Affirming Treatment Act, prohibiting health insurers from denying or limiting coverage for gender affirming care services on the basis of gender identity or expression. And whereas lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, queer, two-spirit, and intersex Washingtonians invite all people to join them during Pride Month in June, celebrating the resiliency of the community in responsible ways and with alternatives to in-person gatherings during this worldwide pandemic. Therefore, Governor Inslee of the state of Washington proclaims June 2021 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in Washington, and encourages all people in our state to join in celebrating diversity and promoting inclusion and equal protection under the law, and further encourage people to join in eliminating discriminatory policies and practices toward any culture, race, or group. Signed the 26th of May, 2021.
Thank you so much. All right, I am going to be reading our SOMS School Board Scholar Awards. 2021 School Board Scholar Awards. The Board of Directors of the Kent School District is recognizing school board scholars from the graduating students. The scholarship is based on scholastic qualifications, financial need, school involvement, as well as a written essay demonstrating how a college education would benefit the student and society. This year's first place recipients of a $5,250 scholarship from the Harry B. and Ruby T. Soames Educational Trust Foundation are Rachel Hu from Kentwood High School and Ariel Soriano from Kent Lake High School. Yay. This year's second place recipient of a $4,125 scholarship from the Harry B. and Ruby T. Soames Educational Trust Foundation is Taylor Richards from Kent Lake High School. Students will receive their certificate in the mail, and congratulations to all of you. All right, we are on to agenda item 6.0. Yeah, we can clap for them again. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are on to 6.0, our public hearing for the 2021-22 school district budget. Ms. Santello, are there any public comments received for this portion of the agenda?
President Daniels, members of the board, and Dr. Watts, no public comments were received for item 6.01 public hearing for the 21-22 district budget.
Thank you so much. So at this time, we will close the public hearing. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, we're on to agenda item 7.0, our board of directors. Oh,
President
did
Daniels,
what I missed?
point of privilege.
Yes,
there is one recognition that I would be remiss if I did not have the opportunity to share, 5.03, if you don't mind.
Sorry, I skipped it.
Not at all, though. The irony is not lost on me. So thank you so much, President Daniels, and to members of our school board. I am proud and excited, certainly, and thankful to share today. Being an effective school board member, we know is no easy task, particularly in today's climate of change, challenge, pandemic, and conflict. School board members need to be knowledgeable about many complex educational and social issues. In addition, school board members need to carry out initiatives and directives from federal and state governments. To face these demands of governing our public schools, school board members also give countless hours of personal time. A public board of education is a legislative body of citizens elected locally by their communities. Through dedicated, responsible endeavors, school board members serve the public's interest in public education. In Kent School District, this is a large and diverse community, a community that represents over 21,000 families, over 26,000 students, and 4,000 employees who speak over 100 languages across 72 square miles. Ultimately, our school board members are here to serve the needs of our students, to ensure that decisions about our schools are made as close to the needs of our students and communities as possible. Now, our school year, as we know, is drawing to an end. And I want to recognize our Kent School Board members for the dedicated individuals who they are, committed to our schools and our students' continued success. I want to also acknowledge two of our board members, President Denise Daniels and Director Maya Vengadassalam, whose combined service to our board, to our district, to our schools and community totals nearly 12 years. This is their final end of the school year recognition meeting. And as we can all attest, this was not a school year any one of us could have imagined. And due in large part to this fact, on behalf of Team KSD, I thank you, each of our board directors, for your service. So team, please join me in thanking our 2020-21 KSD Board of Directors for their service to Kent School District.
Thank you. And forgive me, fellow board members, you definitely need to be recognized. I'm not sure how I overlooked that. So I do apologize. So thank you.
It worked perfectly. Thank you for allowing me to do it. Thank you, President.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so now we are on to agenda item 7.0, our discussion, and we are going to be discussing the proposed resolution that was presented to us regarding Black Lives Matter. So Director Vengadassalam, would you please begin the discussion regarding the resolution?
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned at the previous board meeting, I had an opportunity to meet with the Kent Educators of Color Network, and we discussed 3 priorities for them, and one of which was to discuss a statement approved by the board on the Black Lives Matter movement. And one of the things that I discussed with them is that, well, the board members can come up with something. We wanted it to be authentic and heartfelt. And I sensed the folks who were in the room very passionate about this matter, and they have discussed it amongst themselves and in their schools, respective schools. And one of the things that was suggested was that they come up with a resolution for us to discuss and consider approving. And during our agenda review, there was a discussion about should we make this a discussion, 10 or 15 minutes before a board meeting, or should we have a larger discussion to talk about the importance of what this means to our district? And so this is why you will see it under the board discussion and not discussion and approval. And I would also like Dr. Watts to speak to this particular statement, because I think it's important that it comes from the district as well as the board. So Dr. Watts, I will turn it over to you first, and to President Daniels, I think it would be appropriate that both of you discuss this before all of us chime in. Thank you.
President Daniels, I'll defer, please.
Let me unmute. Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Venkatasalam and Dr. Watts. Yes, I also, in meeting with the Kent educators of color, I am, and I'm very excited first that they brought this forward. And I do know, having in the professional work that I do around equity training and such, I know that this is there's a Black Lives Matter movement versus, the capital Black Lives Matter, right, versus the Black Lives Matter just saying. And I know there's a lot of probably some confusion and some concern. And so I think as a district, I fully support moving forward with this, but I also recognize that as a district, we need to have a little more discussion about what this actually means, what it means for staff, what it means for our students and our families. So I, and in discussing it during the agenda setting, my suggestion was that we have a larger discussion. I do know that a few board members have spoken up in support, but I also know that others have not. So I think that as a board, if this is something we're going to move forward with in supporting our district, which I hope that we do, I think that we all need to be on the same page, and everyone needs to be able to share and possibly listen to concerns or comments from other educators of color or folks that are involved in the school district. I do think it's important to give voice to our educators of color. I don't think that we often in the past have done that. Voices have not been lifted, and so I think this is a wonderful opportunity to partner with them. And to work with them and work with our equity team and our equity council to really move forward, beginning to honor and value and recognize and support each and every one of our staff members. So that's where I stand with it. And so I open it up to any other board directors to make comments or have thoughts about it.
Oh, may I ask Dr. Watts also say a few words?
I appreciate that. And thank you, President Daniels and members of the board. I will share with you, I am pleased that at the emotional fortitude that it takes for leaders within our school district. And we have leaders at every level. I've been fortunate to engage in thoughtful, heartfelt, sometimes uncomfortable conversations with many groups who are identified as members of Team KSD. I regularly meet with our Kent Educators of Color Network and White Allies, LGBTQ plus community. And here's what I shared with them most recently, I think is important for me to share with our general public, certainly those who are on this call, this meeting right now. Black Lives Matter. It is very easy for me as an individual who identifies as a man who happens to be Black, and as a Black man now serving in my current role, serving in a state where I grew up as a young child, and I shared this with our Kent Educators of Color Network, that when we met earlier last, well, it seems like, more than a year ago, most recently after the killing of murder of George Floyd, that if we did not witness, we've certainly seen images and know how that reality has impressed upon us the importance of understanding what does Black Lives Matter mean, what is it and what is it not. And I will share with you just an anecdote from a leadership team meeting with all of our leaders, the rich diversity within our school district. During a meeting, one of our principals, who happens to be white, asked a question, and I appreciate this question so much because it began the in-depth conversation. And one of our leaders said, "Is it okay for us to talk about Black Lives Matter? Is it okay for us to share with our students?" And I was taken aback originally just because of the fact that if we're asking this question, what conversations are we having, and what conversations, more importantly, are we not having? And so my comment was, as well as others, is the simple answer is yes, but here's the challenges that we face. The conversations that say, well, why do we say Black Lives Matter and not simply say all lives matter? Well, that's true. If we're going to focus on targeted universalism and the idea that what we're saying and what we're meaning, yes, it's implied, all lives matter. But I will say this: Black lives do not matter any more than white lives, or Asian lives, or LGBTQ lives, or women's lives. But my goodness, they certainly don't matter less. And that is exactly what many African-American, what many Black people have been feeling, not just recently, but I can share with you my story some other time about how my parents arrived in Washington State. When I tell people my story, my origin story, it began in the Southeast. It began with lessons that we're learning in history. And that's another conversation, again, for another time. But I do believe it is important for us to have these conversations, to be open and honest, to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I fully support our next steps, doing it in the right way. We have leaders who are willing to support and serve as thought partners along this way. And I know there are leaders at our schools who have shared with me that they want a forum and a format to have these conversations in support of all of our leaders, particularly those serving and supporting Black Lives Matter. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you for that, Dr. Watts. Other board directors.
I would love to say something if now's the time to do that. We cannot, as educators or board directors, sit here, I think, well, we're not on the dais, but if we were on the dais, and say that, and not say that Black Lives Matter. We have to say that Black Lives Matter. We have to. And specifically, and it can't just be a statement. We can't just say it because it's a checkbox or it's politically correct or whatever. We have to say it and we have to practice it. We have to talk to our educators. We have to lift their voices. We have to be there for our students and our educators who are Black. It is so important that we say it and practice and we show it. We cannot just say it and leave it or adopt it and then move on. All of us board directors here need to be visible and support and not just be allies. I really appreciate like the educators of color and the Rainier educators of color who I'm work with, talking about the difference between allies and accomplices and co-conspirators. How can we move from being an ally from I support you to being a co-conspirator where we're going to be there in support to the end? And that's what we need to do for our students and for our educators. We also need to, one of the statements is that we need to endorse Black Lives Matter at School Week and the week of action. And I know that there's lessons in curriculum, but there's been some concern from educators because it's not approved curriculum or whatnot. And I think there's got to be a process kind of to be able to have these discussions, because people are not having these discussions because one, they're afraid of having these discussions. Two, they're not educated on how to have these conversations with students. And three, some are uncertain about disciplinary infractions based on not following curriculum guides. And I think that we need to make sure that we are open with educators to be allowed to talk about these topics, teach them how to have these difficult, challenging conversations that might be uncomfortable for students. But I think we need to do it. It has to happen, and Black lives do matter. So that's my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, I agree. Black Lives Matter. And as I said at our last meeting, I support this resolution. And I think we could even go further. Dr. Harmon brought it up with our policy work that, you know, some districts have a 0,000 series, and, you know, beyond just a resolution, you know, how do we live it and show support? You know, maybe that having that new policy series is also another way that we can, you know, add it to our policy. So it's not just a resolution we talk about, you know, in February. I think the resolution is a great first step, and I'm excited about that. But I also want us to consider expanding to our policy series. So I thank everyone who took the time to work on this resolution too.
Yes, I want to thank our educators of color for bringing this forward. They did take a look at North Shore School District and sort of framed it based on that. If I look at North Shore, I see, you know, so many things on their website that describes the activities, the work that they're doing to support this statement. I think what Director Benno said is really important, that we show those supports behind this resolution. And one of the things that I think we can do, while we do discuss this in detail at upcoming meetings, I guess we should think about what are the next steps. And one of the things that I'd like to see is they have a couple of asks, you know, regarding our ethnic studies requirements. And what that would look like, you know, not as a social studies program that we're enforcing, but how can we make sure that there is pedagogy that has professional learning and attached to that, and support that. And so it's not just a social studies program. And then similarly, there is an ask to look at our social emotional learning with regards to race and equity in particular, and how, you know, we can partner with our teachers to ensure that, you know, the teachers are not doing this separately, but we're coming together as a unit to welcome our children into our schools, and to ensure that they know that they really matter, and how Black lives matter to our district administration, staff, top down. So I think if we can support their focus areas, I think that would be a great start. And I agree that a work session is warranted in extending this initiative forward. Thank you.
Dr. Hamada, did you have any comments? I apologize, you didn't have an opportunity.
I just want to echo what everybody else has been saying. I think being an older person, that this is long overdue that we've done this in our school systems. When I had the opportunity about 12 years ago to take an institutional racism class up in Seattle, it was an eye-opening experience, stuff that I'd never heard when I went through my education in history, and the research behind it and everything was eye-opening to me. And I found it very deeply saddening to me that I and my older children didn't have anything of this going through the schools, and we're long overdue in bringing out the reality of what has really historically happened in many of these cases, and especially with Black Lives Matters. And I can't express how many times I've watched on television in horror and seen the same thing happen over and over again, where a Black person was killed and for no apparent reason. And we as leaders, as a nation, as a community, have to stand up for these things and say no more. And I'm really encouraged by all our young people, the way they're coming forward in droves to try to do a lot of things in our society that have been long overdue in changing. And I totally support this resolution. I would like to see all the action items go with it because it's great to talk, but what do kids see and what do people really react to is what we do. And I'm very encouraged by this, and I want to thank them for putting this together, because if I was sitting down to write this type of resolution, quite honestly, I wouldn't even know where to begin. So I appreciate the work on that. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So yeah, so I think next steps would be to schedule a work session to have further discussion around this. But thank you for a great discussion, and I look forward to seeing next steps. All right, we are on to agenda item 8.0, our items for discussion and approval. So we'll begin with agenda item 8.01, and I do believe there's a public comment for this, Ms. Santillo, is that right?
Yes, that is correct, President Daniels and members of the board, Dr. Watts. There is one last comment for the evening, and it is pertaining to 8.01. It is submitted by Veronica Smith Kasem. Good evening. My name is Veronica Smith Kasem, and I'm a parent and community member in KSD. My comment is with regard to agenda item 8.01, superintendent contract. Were I there in person, I'd be holding a sign that says, "Do not extend." A leader isn't a leader if the people don't feel led. Over the years, many people with direct experience under the superintendent have told you that the current leader isn't leading them. Twice, the teachers' union has voted on a resolution declaring no confidence. That vote, originally in April 2018, was again reaffirmed in spring 2019. In May 2018, the principals told you in a letter that they felt stymied by a lack of the leadership and support that we and our students need. Summarizing their frustration, they said, "Our biggest concern remains communication between central office and principals that is disjointed, inaccurate, reactive, or often completely lacking." And they elaborated further, saying, "There is no systemic, regular, ongoing processes whereby principal and assistant principal voice and expertise is sought in district decision-making. While you may be able to cite what might be examples of effective leadership, remember this: a leader isn't a leader if the people don't feel led. Time and again, people in various positions in this district have told you they are not being effectively led. It is time to cut our losses and start afresh. Please do not extend the current contract. Thank you for your time." That is the last comment for this item and for this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Santillo, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, so agenda item 8.01, is there a motion?
President Daniels, I move that we postpone any changes to the contract of the superintendent for 6 months.
A second.
Okay, that has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Okay, I will call for the vote on that. All those in favor of postponing, well, let me go back. I do have a little bit of discussion, so there's a couple of things I want to point out. I think that we do recognize that the current contract would end in June of 2022. And I believe that I'm not sure, I don't believe the current board directors outside of Director Vengadasalam have been involved in a superintendent search. And thinking about the process and the time that takes, as well as the upcoming challenges that we have over the next year, I don't know I don't feel as though that would be the most advantageous decision. However, just wanted to put that out there, thinking about what we have to do in the future and what our responsibility is as a board. And it appears when you're talking about 6 months, it appears that you are interested in having a new board, possibly determine whether or not the superintendent contract should be extended. And I think that would be a misstep because new board members will not have the knowledge or experience or probably information to make that decision intelligently, in my opinion. I don't think there'll be enough information and enough experience unless they have been following the district regularly, which I'm not sure that would be the case. So I would be concerned about the lack of knowledge and experience of postponing that decision. So
I have a concern. The motion here is talking about extension. And I would think this particular motion would take priority over secondary motions. So I'm a little confused, Curtis, if you can help us with that.
Oh, right. Okay.
There is a motion on the floor. I think it would be appropriate for there to be vote on it at some point. Since there is a motion on the floor, there should be votes on it. I don't have a primary motion made yet. So this is the only motion that's before the board.
So
this motion talks specifically about extension, not postponement, whether we want to or not.
Without getting too much in semantics, this motion does involve a failure to extend. And so it does, I do believe it is germane. Now, nothing would prevent the board from following up with the motion in the other direction after this motion, right? There would be nothing that would prevent that.
Okay. So
I'd just like to speak to my motion too, is that when we came on, when we had 3 board directors get elected, we were faced with the same thing to have to do after a short period of time. And I really wasn't totally prepared for that. But now I've been thinking about this a lot, that we have some really wonderful candidates that are stepping forward to be on the board, and a diverse amount of candidates, which is really encouraging. And this gives the community an opportunity to really delve into how they feel about things and try to come up with their ideas. And it's just like kind of, if I'm going to sell my house, let's say, and I decide to really want to get it sold fast, I certainly wouldn't want to go and make a whole bunch of decisions about what I did to the interior or exterior for a new person coming in to live in that house. I'd want to just kind of let them do it. And that's kind of the way I feel about this, that it gives them the opportunity to do that. You, Denise, and Maya have been wonderful on this board and made great decisions. But from now on, in a few months, there'll be a whole new board. And I just like to see them have that opportunity to weigh in on that. And I do think it gives us plenty of time to extend that contract at that particular time. That's my feelings.
We have it on our board goals this year to have goals for the superintendent by 7/1, which is very shortly. So we could do, a 6-month goal, do like 1 6-month goal with some KPIs to assist in that process, I think. But I'm advocating for waiting until the new board.
Yeah, the evaluation is based on last year when the full board was in place. Right. So I'm not following really.
No, we have to have new goal. We agreed that for this evaluation process, there'd be new goals for the 21-22 school year by 7/1. So I was going to say that in my board director comments, we're going to need to have a meeting for that before the end, because we haven't achieved any of our board goals. That's one of them, was to have some goals for the superintendent by 7/1. So I think having, setting one goal with, not a bunch of KPIs for this 6-month period until the board gets on, the new board, I think would be something we could do. It's doable.
I guess I have some questions. I guess I need to know what the pros and cons are, because being a new board member, I literally don't know anything about this. I know there's probably going to be guidance or whatnot, but I just need to know, like, and maybe that's to you, Denise, like, what would the pros and cons be of if this passes, if we decide to extend and to postpone extension for 6 months? What would that do?
I can give you my opinion. So again, like I mentioned, we have several things coming up. So we have, well, to be clear, superintendent roles are at times difficult to fill, and thinking about Dr. Watts and his potential future, it can take a while to find that position. And so he would, as well as us, it also takes a while to fill the superintendent role. So thinking about beginning a superintendent search and him not having security as far as, having to determine what that looks like for his family and for, possibly a different position. We have, we're going back to in-person learning. So we would have a new, potentially, we'd have a new superintendent or something like that, or we'd have that confusion moving into this potential next school year. We've got a levy that we've got to pass. So there's a lot of things that are coming up that are relatively large items that I feel as though it would be very difficult, not only with a new board, but potentially with a new superintendent within a year. You'd have an almost entirely new board. You have Director Hamada and Vice President Bender have been here for 2 years, but I think that would be a very difficult and heavy lift over the next year. So I feel as though I don't think that would be the best move for our students. I don't think that would be the best move for our staff. And I know there are a lot of concerns out there, but I also know that Dr. Watts has brought this district in a complete, almost 180-degree direction that it has been since I've even been on the board. So I feel as though that's just my opinion though. So again, those are some things I see. And I don't know if maybe Director Vengadaslam, who has a lot more experience than I do, may have some other insights because she has been through that search and that experience.
Yes, I would agree. And I had brought that up as well. The number of unresolved or pending issues that we have. We have our boundary. We have new schools opening up, reopening. We have our levy discussions. We have just all of the ESSER funds, our budget, all of these things are not only Dr. Watts, the staff who support him, the work that they do. And it could be a calamity if they decide to leave at this point in time. So that is one thing, but the other is the number of initiatives we're taking on that have already started, particularly as it relates to equity and race matters. I am concerned that a lot of that work that has been developed and supported will fall through the cracks. So I have some deep concerns about shifting superintendents at this point in time, particularly because we have an incredible team of people who have supported this district and brought it forward, complete turnaround, and are very clear on the mission and vision to get us to where we need to be to address our deepest concerns for our students. And so I am also concerned about this particular vote in that there are not going to be board of directors who are familiar with the work, what has happened to get us to this position, financial position. And believe me, I know what other administrations were dealing with. You can watch the videos to see how open they were to the level of questioning done by board members and the changes that have been made in the past, in terms of bringing us financially to a financially sound position. And so I am very much in support of Dr. Watts leading us. And I have written a statement which I plan to read as well when we get to that motion.
Is there any other discussion? All right, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of postponing the extension of Dr. Watt's contract for 6 months, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. No.
No.
Motion fails. All right, is there another motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion. We discuss and approve a one-year extension of the superintendent contract of Dr. Calvin J. Watts from 2022 to 2023.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, discussion. Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote. Or is there discussion? Would you like to?
I'd like to read a statement. Is that
sure
at this point? Okay. Okay, so to elaborate on my decision, this is actually a little long, so I apologize. Dr. Watts, thank you for your leadership over the past year. The pandemic created many challenges for the KSD community, and in my final year of service, I am happy to report that you and staff did an admirable job in maintaining an enviable financial position, presenting another clean financial accountability and federal audit, and addressing the challenges I cited a year ago of 1, providing regular and timely feedback to and from staff and board, 2, addressing equity matters with fidelity, and 3, providing for a detailed pathway to communicate and engage our families in their students' learning. To begin, I will address learning. Learning during the pandemic presented many challenges. However, the district paid close attention to where our students are in the learning process, examined data through formative measures, employed targeted interventions, strengthened our MTSS practices, and created system supports to ensure the progress and growth made by our students within the school year. The graduation rate for our class of 2020 Black students was 90.8%, which is an increase of 8.2% from the year before. Our Hispanic Latino students showed a 4.5% increase with a graduation rate of 81.4% for the class of 2020. Class of 2020 IE students, inclusive education students, had a graduation rate of 63.3%, which is a 10.1% increase from the class of 2019. And the class of 2020 EL students had a graduation rate of 72.2%, which is a 7.5% increase from the class of 2019. While we know that our students have a tough hill to climb due to the learning modes presented during the pandemic, our district is making strides to ensure that supports are in place now and before the next school year. To this end, the district is addressing the inequities and racial divide that has triggered a deep sense of urgency for our students. In addressing engagement with students, families, staff, and board, the district has developed and implemented a district-wide communications plan whereby staff and family surveys were conducted to determine concerns regarding school reopening plans and boundary changes. We launched the first ever KSD Student Equity and Inclusion Survey, and in the third quarter, we'll launch the pilot testing of our new KSD Equity audit tool developed by the Equity Council. 6 thought exchange opportunities have been completed in the 2021 school year, with at least 3 additional opportunities being designed through the end of the school year, and these 9 exchanges are an increase from the 5 exchanges conducted in the 2019-20 school year. The active engagement of our community partners and the Equity Council, which includes many of our educators of color, prompted open dialogue on racial inequities and experiences faced by our communities of color. Our district began a coordinated effort to actively listen, engage, and follow up with partnerships and solutions, including support services provided to accelerate learning over the summer months. A detailed list by school is available to the public. Partnerships have been solidified or expanded to support our diversity, equity, and inclusion work to date. with South King County Discipline Coalition, Office of the Education Ombuds, Project Mr. Iraqi Community Center, and professional learning and coaching with our partners with Kingmakers of Oakland, New Leaders Grant by Gates Foundation and Bellman Global. In sum, the district listened and took action with an equity council consisting of educators from all of our schools, revisited the race and equity policy from the lens of student well-being, and provided investments in diversity, equity, and inclusion at new levels, from professional learning to 2 new positions in an Office of Equity and Strategic Engagement. Our board continues to listen to our educators of color and diverse community in addressing social emotional learning as it pertains to race, and looking at pedagogy to inspire our students and families to actively engage in the learning of ethnic studies. All of this would not be possible with our superintendent leading the charge. As well, the board's current communication methods have markedly improved through email responses to direct questions, board agenda reviews, regular executive sessions to discuss matters of confidentiality, weekly superintendent updates, and one-to-one BSGT meetings. The board and superintendent governance team has faced challenges with the changing makeup of the board these past 2 years, and will continue to do so in the coming years. We thank Ms. Karen Hawley for handling much of this work without assistance this past year, Ms. Pam Hawley for her backup assistance, and we welcome Ms. Naomi Zantello to help further improve our board superintendent communications in the future. We are at a crossroads with many initiatives that have begun: the boundary changes, levy decisions, reopening, addressing social and emotional learning related to race and equity, and will continue to need the vision of our current leadership of Dr. Watts and our stellar leaders in administration and in our buildings. With that, I enthusiastically support the extension of Dr. Watts' contract from 2022 to 2023 to continue the great work happening in the Kent School District. Thank you.
Is there other discussion? So I also would like to just make a statement and echo what Director Vengadaslam shared in her thoughtful and thorough statement. I want to just take a moment and recognize not only the academic accomplishments and the leadership accomplishments, but just the grace and dignity of which Dr. Watts has brought to this district and led amidst targeted challenges. And since I've been on the board, there's been a campaign to get rid of Dr. Watts the entire time. And there's a lot of it has been based on information that was not accurate. A lot of it was based on what I believe. I believe there were some racial issues in there. I believe that I've experienced racial comments and letters since I've been on the board. I've heard comments about Dr. Watts. I've seen them on social media. So I am confident in saying that exists, and the grace of which you have handled that, in particular when I'm just going to be blunt, we have 2 board members who basically ran on a campaign that they were going to make changes and flip the board and change the superintendent. Your graciousness amidst the demands that have existed for your staff over the last 2 years, the demands that have existed on you, and your responses and the graciousness of the staff responding due to your leadership has been exemplary. I don't know many people that could have sustained those demands and the pressure that has been put on this district. So I applaud you in continuing to maintain your integrity and your grace and keep students at the focus of everything that this district does and your leadership. So it is much appreciated. My hope is that when there is a new board, I'm excited because I do feel as though we need a board that's going to be supportive and that are going to help to move the district forward in a positive way. And it's going to acknowledge all the accomplishments that have happened. It's very easy. I've watched people blame you for negative things that have happened, but when we've had positive things, they won't ever give you credit. So I want to acknowledge you and give you that credit. And so, and there are other community members who do as well. So I just want you to know that I also fully support you and the work that you do. And so That's the end of my statement. So at this point, I will
All
go
right,
ahead.
I actually have something to say now. If you were implying that I ran on changing the superintendent, I never said that when I was running. And I look at, the strategic plan expires in 7 days. And the measures on many of those measures we haven't met. Core 24, we don't have an official plan. And I'm looking at 10th graders on track to graduate. It was 26% 4 years ago, and now it is 38% on track to graduate. I'm looking at declining test scores. I'm looking at my biggest focus, my biggest area of concern right now is students with inclusive education. And there's just, there's just been so many concerns for that in COVID times. And, we're going to be voting on summer plans and things like that. And I don't see a lot of supports for our inclusive ed students. So I just wanted to make that comment. I think we should wait.
Any additional discussion?
I mean, I'll have a comment. Being someone new to the board, I don't know necessarily the past stuff except for what I've seen in the local paper. And that's not really, I think, always the only way to kind of judge what's going on in the district. For me, what I'm thinking is just like, we just had a year or 15 months or whatever of COVID, and it's not going away. And I just feel like we need at this point, I feel like we need some sort of consistency to get us through the next year. I think I'm in favor of the extension for a year only because I need to see some stuff happen that's not COVID. All I've known on this board is what's been going on while we've been on quarantine, and a lot of the stuff and the measures and whatnot is just not an accurate portrayal of what's going on in the district. It's because it's COVID that's causing a lot of that stuff, and I just don't think it's a fair representation of what's going on with the leadership of our district. And so I think we need to consider that before we make any choices about that's why I feel comfortable with a 1 year extension, only because after this next year, I don't know what data and whatnot will look like, but it'll be a non-quarantine year. We can see more results and see more things. And I think I would feel more comfortable with that. And ultimately that's the lens I'm looking at, and not necessarily, I mean, I'm getting lots of emails from people on either part or either side. But to me, I just want consistency, and I want us to be able to continue the great work that's going on in a non-COVID year. So that's where my brain is at.
So I also wanted to add that same thing is that what would this have looked like, all of these initiatives in a non-COVID year? I believe all districts are going through the same issues with test scores and so forth. It hasn't been a normal year by any means. And the fact that we were able to get a lot of these initiatives off the ground has been remarkable to me. So thank you for that.
All right, so I will now call for the vote. All those in favor of extending Dr. Watt's contract 1 year to the 2022-2023 school year, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no.
No.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. We're on to agenda item 8.02, change order approval for the KSD radio project, Day Wireless Phase 1. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.02 change order approval KSD radio project Day Wireless Phase 1.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. And I want to just take a moment to thank everyone on staff for answering the many questions that came with regards to these agenda items. Your time is appreciated. Is there any discussion? It's been moved and seconded.
I have one question, and forgive, this didn't make it on my questions. It just came up. I thank you for including when we first approved this. Then I looked at vouchers to see how much we'd actually paid out to them. And I don't see we've paid anything but about $15K to Day Wireless. So is there a big check being written shortly?
Yeah, well, I can answer that. President Daniel, Dr. Watts, members of the board, Ms. Santello. This change is really all about, we were going to have our own district staff do this antenna work on our roofs. They are busy with other projects, and so we just needed to extend the amount a little bit more so that they can do the work. The Day Wireless can do the work. The work will happen this summer.
Okay, okay, that's what I was just wondering. Okay, thank you. That was helpful.
Okay.
Right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.02, the change order approval for the KSD radio project, Day Wireless Phase 1, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? Motion carries. 8.03, the Meridian Elementary HVAC replacement approval of final acceptance. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.03 Meridian Elementary HVAC replacement approval of final acceptance.
Or a second?
I second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those, oh, is there any discussion? My apologies. I'm rushing.
It's a big agenda.
It is. No. We'll get through. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All of those in favor of approving agenda item 8.03, the Meridian Elementary HVAC replacement approval of final acceptance, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. 8.04, the French Field turf replacement. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.04 French Field turf replacement.
Or a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. And I think I'd asked for this ahead of time at one of our meetings about whether the AstroTurf was about microplastics and environmental impact. I didn't get that answer, and I wasn't sure if this is going to be. I guess I wasn't sure if this was going to be real turf or no, it is synthetic turf. So I wanted to find out more about that, and I just don't know. Was anybody able to find that answer?
Yes, President Daniels, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Santello. Yes, we are still trying to get that data for you, Director Benno. We have reached out to Shaw Sports. This is from what we're being told, is a new buzzword. So this has just come up in the last probably like 18 months. So the Shaw Sports is trying to get some data on the microplastics is what you're talking about. The one suggestion that they did before they come back with their final report to me or their comments is that there's microplastics in everything, including the tires on the roadway. So again, there's really a lot of data on the sports field. We're just trying to get that data from the American Association of Sports Turf Fields.
Got it. And I realized that there's a lot of microplastics, especially if you're going to use plastic turf on a field. But I was just wondering if there's any research on environmental impact, but I'm assuming I'll just have to wait. But thank you. I appreciate you still looking for me.
We will get that information to you as soon as I get it.
All right. Thank you.
And then I have another question for this one as well. So this was money left over from the lighting. So do we have budget for all the other 2018 levy projects?
Yes, there's budget for all the other levy projects with contingency built in to each project and also a contingency pot for the entire levy.
Okay, so nothing's going to be missed on that 2018 levy for this turf replacement.
Nothing will be missed on this one. No, not for using this budget from French Field lighting.
Okay. And so is this something that just, you said risk management identified this?
That is correct.
How old is the field?
It is 13 years old, to my knowledge.
Okay. Is there, I mean, I realize I'm asking these questions. I'm sorry that I didn't send them in. This is a huge agenda. So forgive me, but so how often do we replace the fields? Does an average school district replace?
I'm not too sure what average school districts do. I can get that data for you, Director Benninger, but I can let you know that what we have to do is we have to perform a GMAX test on all of our turf annually. And those that GMAX test is just basically a maximum G's of mechanical shock. So once those mechanical shock data comes down, then we must start to think about replacement of that due to the concussions, hurt, safety conditions. So annually, we have a GMAX test done on that. We had one done on 19 and 20. But again, here we are 13 years later with French Field. I think it's held up very well with not only the amount of sports that we do across our district, but also in facility use.
Great, thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.04, the French Field turf replacement, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. 8.05, French Field scoreboard replacement. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.05 French Field scoreboard replacement.
I second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.05, the French Field scoreboard replacement, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? Motion carries. 8.06, portable relocation to Covington Elementary, contracts to Prime Electric, Sequoia Electric LLC, and Robbins and Company. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.06 portable relocation to Covington Elementary, contracts to Prime Electric, Sequoia Electric LLC, and Robbins and Company.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I just want to review the questions I had before. So the capacity for the school is 630. Does that, without portables, is it 630, or is 630 capacity with the portables?
Members of the board,
Thank you. Sure.
President Daniels and Dr. Watts, Ms. Santello, we provided some of that capacity information earlier, but I'll have Director Buzzard update you on that.
Yes, that is 630 without the portables.
Without the portables, okay. And current enrollment is 590, projected enrollment is 636. There's currently 2 portables on site, correct? I'm just reading from what you shared. So there's currently 2 portables on site. Am I correct in that?
That is correct, yes. And
they're 6th grade classes.
That is correct.
And then, so 2 more portables, so there will be 4 6th grade classes. And so that will up the capacity at the school from 630 to, I guess, 44 students can fit in the portables. So that increases the capacity from 630 to, math is not my strong suit, by 88 seats.
On a maximum capacity level, that is correct. An operational level, it would be 28 to 32 students.
Okay, 28 to 32 students. So
that's correct. So
that'll bring our capacity up to 690 seats. Oh, but you've got 2 other portables, so that's 120. So that'll bring our capacity up to 750. Yes. If 630 is our capacity without any portables, then if there's going to be 4 portables, then that would bring our capacity up. If even just conservatively saying like 30 students in there, that would bring it up to about 750 capacity. And projected enrollment is 636.
Correct.
Okay, so we would have an extra over 123 extra seats at Covington.
Director Bettinger, I'd like to add something to that math, and that is that there's a difference between instructional capacity and capacity of a portable. So we have labor contracts that have class size, caseload, and so instructional capacity is something different. And so I just wanted to make the note of that.
Okay, so if you just even said, you know, 20 seats in those 4 portables, that would be 80. So that would bump up the capacity for the whole school to, you know, over 700. And the projected enrollment next year is 636. And there's a potential that we will be moving 6th graders out the following year.
Yes, and I would also add the variable that projections by grade level is not always exact. And so we have to have the flexibility of being able to add, in this case, 2 additional classrooms that we've needed, as I shared earlier. Even during the pandemic, we waited because of the closure, and now we're moving ahead with this agenda item.
Okay, so just to be clear, though, the capacity there will be 710 seats. Projected is 636, so that should be it for portables there. We should never need portables again. And okay.
I have a question about the capacity. Does that include hallways, alcoves, and stages and whatnot?
It does not. Capacity is a classroom that is assigned by an FTE. And does instructions for students. And you also have to remember that that includes not only grade level instruction, but programs as well.
Okay, because I think I remember a conversation about alcoves being considered teaching spaces, but I don't necessarily consider that, but they're in the numbers, so that's fine. But I just don't necessarily consider an alcove a teaching space, but I get that they're included. But does that include alcoves, whatnot? Not necessarily hallways, but Covington doesn't have any of those?
Covington does not have any of those, no.
Okay. I mean, ultimately, I'll say what I say every time we talk about portables. I would rather us look at a long range plan of making sure that spaces for students exist in buildings and not having to use portables because they're expensive and take money away from where students need. But that's a whole other, you all know how I feel, but I'm just gonna put that out there. But obviously this sounds like it's needed. So I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
All right, any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.06, the portable relocation to Covington Elementary, contracts to Prime Electric, Sequoia Electric LLC, and Robbins and Company, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no.
No.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. 8.07, Carriage Crest Elementary Multipurpose Room, Audio-Visual System Replacement, Contract to Electricom Sound and Communications System. Is there a motion?
I believe this one was removed.
Oh, it was removed. I apologize. I'm sorry. It's still on there. 8.08, Park Orchard Elementary Reader Board Replacement, Contract to Daktronics, Inc. and Sequoia Electric.
Motion to accept 8.08, Park Orchard Elementary Reader Board Replacement, Contract to Daktronics, Inc. and Sequoia Electric.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.08, the Park Orchard Elementary Reader Board Replacement, Contract to Daktronics, Inc. and Sequoia Electric, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. 8.09, Matson Middle Gym Sound System Replacement, Contract to Electricom Sound and Communication Systems. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.09, Matson Middle Gym Sound System Replacement, Contract to Electricom Sound and Communication Systems.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. Is this the same company that's doing the theater sound?
Yes, it is. It's the same company that's doing the theater sound. It's also the same company that's doing the KM theater sound. It's also the same company that does all of our elementary and middle school new builds.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.09, the Matson Middle Gym Sound System Replacement Contract to Electrocom Sound and Communication Systems, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? Motion carries. 8.10, Lockdown Window Screen Project. Is there a motion?
I'm sorry, I got a little jammed up. I think, did we skip 8.08 Park Orchard Elementary Reading Board Replacement?
We approved it.
Okay, I got all jammed up. Okay, I make a motion, we approve 8.10 Lockdown Window Screen Project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Can someone give me a little bit more information about this? I think I know what this is, but I think I need more information.
Yes, no problem there. This is actually a project that's been in the works for a number of years. Currently, you know, one of the working in the schools, you're aware that in a lockdown situation, we're supposed to block all windows. That's great for outside windows that have the blinds and everything that's set to go. But we also have a lot of windows that are either on doors or next to doors that are facing into hallways. Currently, what staff are asked to do is to have like some butcher paper or, you know, stuff that is ready to put over those windows in case of a lockdown, which, you know, maybe if you measured wrong or you didn't know, it could cause problems. And so this is a all windows have been measured. These shades are being ordered to those specifications. They will be right there on the windows and can be easily unrolled in the time of a lockdown and then rolled back up again when the lockdown is done. It will bring consistency district-wide, and they are quality items that should last.
Thank you. Okay, I thought that's what it is, and I understand. But as a point, I'm going to say, just like as a teacher, one of the worst things I hate to do, more than paperwork, more than grading, more than anything, is lockdown drills and the whole run, hide, fight thing. Like, is traumatic to students and educators, and I know it's a reality of what we have to do, and it's unfortunate. It's something that we have to buy for emergency preparedness for lockdown drills. I understand, but I'm just gonna put out there that it's one of my least favorite things as a teacher to do with students.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.10, the lockdown window screen project, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. 8.11, Kent Meridian High Girls Softball Synthetic Turf and Kent Meridian Pool Infill and Slab. Is there a motion?
I make a motion, we approve 8.11 Kent Meridian High Girls Softball Synthetic Turf and Kent Meridian Pool Infill and Slab.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.11, Kent Meridian High Girls Softball Synthetic Turf and Kent Meridian Pool Infill and Slab, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Or any abstentions, I apologize. Motion carries. 8.12, Nutrition Services Purchase of Replacement Refrigerated Trucks. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.12 Nutrition Services Purchase of Replacement Refrigerated Trucks.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.12, Nutrition Services Purchase of Replacement Refrigerated Trucks, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. 8.13, nutrition services purchase of horizontal flow wrapper and tray sealer machines. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve 8.13, nutrition services purchase of horizontal flow wrapper and tray sealer machines.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.13, the nutrition services purchase of horizontal flow wrapper and tray sealer machines, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? The motion carries. 8.14, the award for RFP KSD 2021-01 Summer Extended Education Opportunities. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.14 award for RFP KSD 2021-01 Summer Extended Education Opportunities.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
No discussion, just a comment. I just wanted to thank Randy Heath for providing that Excel spreadsheet for the first time. I can see all that's going on. These look like some new fun opportunities, maybe arts related is what it looks like to me for students.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of approving agenda item 8.14, the award for RFP KSC 2021-01 Summer Extended Education Opportunities, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. 8.15, the 2021-22 Kindergarten Learning Technology Refresh. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.15 2021-2022 Kindergarten Learning Technology Refresh.
I second.
Okay, and it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I have one bit of discussion, and it's just, well, technology is great for kindergarten learners. Just I want to make sure that we remember that play and socializing with peers is very important for kindergartners to do. And while this is great and it needed, but let us technology a little bit more time to discover and have fun and play and learn some social stuff in schools.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.15, the 2021-22 Kindergarten Learning Technology Refresh, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? The motion carries. 8.16, telephone and voicemail system upgrade, award of contract. Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we approve 8.16 telephone and voicemail system upgrade award of contract.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.16, the telephone and voicemail system upgrade, award of contract, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? Motion carries. 8.17, administrative technology to support flexible environments, headsets. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve 8.17 administrative technology to support flexible environments headsets.
I second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.17, this administrative technology to support flexible environments headsets, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. 8.18, the school kiosk technology refresh. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.18 school kiosk technology refresh.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I didn't have a question on this until we talked about the budget, and it came up that So these school kiosks, are they for COVID? It's where the students are checking in. Are we going to still need that?
So thank you for the question, Director Bettinger. Good evening, President Daniels, Board Directors, Dr. Watts, Ms. Santello. So currently the kiosks are being used for COVID, but that wasn't the initial intent. They're used also for visitors to check in, people able to check in when they first get to schools and such. So this is an upgrade of that system.
Okay.
Right. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.18, the school kiosk technology refresh, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no.
No.
Any abstentions? The motion carries. On to agenda item 8.19, the school office and support staff technology refresh. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve 8.19, school office and support staff technology refresh.
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.19, the school office and support staff technology refresh, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no.
No.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. 8.20, the renewal for microcomputer systems, micro K-12 laptop repair. Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we approve 8.20 renewal microcomputer K-12 laptop repair.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.20, the renewal of microcomputer systems, micro K-12 laptop repair, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no.
No.
Are there any abstentions? Motion carries. Item 8.21, Kingmakers of Oakland Equity Leadership and Learning Development. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 8.21 Kingmakers of Oakland Equity Leadership Learning and Development.
I second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8.21, Kingmakers of Oakland Equity Leadership Learning and Development, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. We are on to our consent agenda. Is there any consent agenda item that someone would like to pull?
I'd like to pull 9.20. I just have a little question on that one.
Okay. All right. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 9.01 through 9.22 minus 9.20?
I make a motion, we approve consent agenda minus 9.20.
I second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda items 9.01 through 9.22 minus 9.20, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to approve agenda item 9.20?
I make a motion, we approve 9.20 IMC textbook adoptions, Realize My World, K-5 Social Studies.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
And I apologize, I didn't ask this earlier. It looks like, is this online only curriculum? Are there textbooks involved?
Yes, President Daniels, directors, Dr. Watts. Yes, there are textbooks attached to this. So there are both online resources and hard copy paper resources for the student.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
Call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 9.20 IMC textbook adoptions, Realize My World, K-5 Social Studies, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Are there any abstentions? Motion carries. We're on to agenda item 10, which is informational, and there's information about the standards for participation in secondary athletics and activities. And on to, was there something about that?
I just, the policy is really old. Just making a note, we also have a lot of policies we need to update.
All right, we're on to agenda item 11, our final communication, and we do not have any other additional communication from the audience. Is that correct, Ms. Antelo?
Yes, President Daniels, members of the board, and Dr. Watts, that is correct. All public comments have been read.
Thank you. All right, we're on to board reports and discussion. Who'd like to begin?
I'll go ahead and start.
Thank you.
My shout out, congratulations to the class of 2021. It was great to hear about all your celebrations at your schools. And thanks for seniors for emailing me. I really appreciate the conversations that we've had. And big thanks to parents, educators, classmates, peers, family members that help these seniors along. We know it really does take a village to support students to graduate and go through the school system. So that's just amazing. I just definitely want to give kudos there. I'm always amazed by Mr. Rarick and Dr. Harmon and team when it comes to budget presentation. I don't know why, but I just love listening to what's going on with that. It's done in a way that just makes me feel like I'm smart. So I really appreciate the report. I look forward to hearing more budget presentations. I know that sounds weird, but I'm very excited by that. Also to the educators of color, I know I reported last time that I met with them, but it was just great to meet with the educators and their passion and the work that they're doing for the district and collaboration and meeting with Dr. Watts and other board directors. I think the work they're doing is so important. And again, we need to listen to our educators of color. We need to support them, and not just with words, but with actions. What have I done the last couple of weeks since the last meeting? I did a graduation recording, which was fun and new and different for me. I'm curious what next year will look like, which is interesting too. We did the state audit exit conference yesterday, which again is just interesting hearing about the audits. I know it sounds like it's not, but it's actually really interesting stuff. I guess that's why I'm here, is because I like that stuff. So it's interesting to me. Upcoming things, I don't necessarily have anything upcoming here. I do know that for school, at my work anyway, I have a lot going on and trainings over the summer and whatnot. But yeah, that's all I have. So it's been a great school year. I look forward to hearing from the community some more, and I look forward to seeing you more next school year.
I can go next. I would like to echo congratulations to the class of 2021. All my friends that have 2021 graduates from Kent School District, I saw all your pictures, and for my friends all over the country, I saw your pictures too. Lots of kids, and even seeing, I know that some of our students are moving up from elementary to high school. So that's going to be a whole new world. So that's exciting. I had the opportunity to listen to the live streams of the Kent Ridge and the Kentwood choir concerts. They were both beautiful and amazing and creative, and it was really fun to hear and see what they did. So if they're a KM or I don't think Kent Lake has choir, but if you do, I would love to be invited. Sent a link if you had streaming concerts as well. I'm also planning to watch the Kentwood Drama live stream of their show, Unstable Connection. I just got that link, and so I'm excited to watch that. We had a lot of executive sessions since the last board meeting, and I think I mentioned, the next step is that by July 1st, one of our board goals was have the superintendent's goals established for the 2021 school year. So that's a compressed timeline. We have about 7 days to accomplish that. I got invited to visit Lake Young's. So I visited Lake Young's yesterday. That was fun. It reminded me of the school I went to when I was a kid. It's built around the same era. Definitely fun to meet the staff there and just see a different school. And the audit exit conference. Yes, that was yesterday. And thank you for everyone putting that together. I continue to be excited about summer plans, and to echo what I said before to Mr. Heath about all the opportunities for our students this summer. I hope that our students can take advantage of those opportunities, and that everyone will get a chance. Our staff, our teachers, our in-school staff will get the opportunity to relax and rest up after such an incredible year, and that everyone on our staff will get a chance to have a break maybe. And because this is the last official board meeting of this school year, and there will probably be, if memory serves, there will probably be a couple meetings in the summer, but mostly it is fairly quiet until August. So I, again, want to always thank my board colleagues for all their hard work. And that concludes my report.
Yeah. Director Amato, would you like to go?
Yes, it's been a really busy, packed month of various meetings. I think I turned in about 64 hours of work on my last time card. For those who are thinking about getting on the board, just there's a lot of work involved too, and you need to be aware of that. I think I finished up on the 6/12 that Saturday my work in implicit bias, and I did appreciate that training with 2 Saturdays and some intense training that I picked up a lot of stuff from, like I do in every one of them I attend. On the 15th, I again saw the Revolution Remix video. And again, I enjoyed it and picked up some things that I hadn't before. Our students that kind of led that were incredible in how they presented themselves and the maturity and how they led the whole group through it. It was an excellent night and a great start to where we're going to go with Kingmakers in the future, which definitely has to be sustainable. I listened to both live, the Kentridge Choir and the Kentwood Choir, and their presentations were excellent. So I'm glad to see that we are continuing with music in our schools. It's so important to have that. One of the things that I found really interesting was got a lot of kind of pushback on the graduation. And yet I was watching and following social media, and some of the quotes that stood out from people I actually know quite well, that Kent Lake's graduation was the best ever, from one of our citizens that had a son that graduated that. Another comment was that was a huge lift for administration teams and staff. They put in 12+ hour days. So thank you very much for all the work in that. Another member says, to me, this seems like such a more personal event. Another community member said, when I first heard that we were doing this, I wasn't very enthusiastic about it. After spending the afternoon participating, I admit I was so wrong. It was an absolutely incredible event. So a lot of times when we hear things from people who have issues, it's interesting to follow through with that and see how other people feel about it. So it made me feel better when I saw there was other opinions out there that we probably didn't hear from in the beginning. So that was it. That was a great thing. And again, I want to congratulate all our graduates. What an accomplishment, and what an accomplishment for some of our families, that sometimes this could be our very first child in their extended family for years that graduated from high school. And let's hope that continues, that they can go on and fulfill any other educational opportunities in the future and make it be a first. All the kids are so excited in their pictures and stuff. It was really great to see all that. And we have a lot of work to do ahead of us. And so I thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I was especially pleased because 3 of the things that I did run on in actuality in my campaign was watching the finances so closely. And it looks like we have a good team in place that is really meeting that goal. And the other part of that, which wasn't part of my campaign, is making that sustainable. And the other 2 parts of what I ran on in a campaign, I have been trying to communicate with all community members, staff, and anybody that wanted to meet with me. I surely met with that. The other part of the campaign that I ran on still has to be completely fulfilled, and that's excellent in all areas. I think we're working toward that. We have a lot of room to adjust on, and it's been a great concern of mine with the some of the children or the students who have IEPs, 504s, inclusive education, where they feel that the ball has been dropped with them. And I'm not sure that's totally accurate for all of them, but we don't ever want to leave any of our students behind. I'm encouraged to go on and work on the Black Lives Matters resolution. I think it's extremely important. As I said, it's long overdue that we change these things in our society as a whole. And if we do change these things in society, we as a community will be better as people, whether we're Black, white, or whatever color or race or creed. If we are inclusive of all, it helps all of us in the long run. So thank you very much, and that concludes my report.
Okay. I also want to congratulate all of our graduates and families. And I want to especially thank our educators for all that you've done to work with to get our students to the end. Graduation is such a great opportunity for board members to really connect, and I'm really disappointed the last 2 years we didn't have that opportunity. This would have been my last year, but I cherish those memories. Getting there early, way before 8 a.m., just taking in the moments. So I know that feeling, how great it is to be with the students. So congratulations to all of our educators as well. I also want to thank our Kentwood Choir leaders for the invitation. It was just amazing and so beautiful. And I'm so happy to hear about Dr. White. I've heard that from several folks that it's great to have him here, the team, and the support that he has. And in fact, our entire teaching and learning team, stellar team. Everywhere I go, I hear about that from our teachers and family members. Just I'm so in awe of our teaching and learning team. And I thank the leadership, Dr. Watts and Ms. West, Chief West, and all of our professionals at the teaching and learning team, along with other communities. Thank you. And then I also wanted to congratulate the budget and finance team. I know that a clean audit is not a simple thing to achieve, but we've done that now 2 years in a row. And frankly speaking, the fact that we are opening up our exit items and having that conversation is of course, it should not be a novel thing. It should have been expected, but I appreciate that our district took that on and has been transparent about that. And that's what leadership is about, is being transparent. And so I feel like this team has done that. And so I don't have any regrets of my decision tonight. And I also want to thank our our HR team for all the hires that are coming through. I know special education is worrisome And we know we're preparing for all of these eventualities, that the supports that are going to be needed for our students. So I feel especially heartened by the care that our finance and budget team are putting into making sure our budget reflects the priorities of the board and the community. And I feel like those support systems are going to be in place for the coming year. And then I look forward to continuing to work with our board superintendent governance team in working on policies and moving us forward in the coming year. Thank you all.
I do need to start by apologizing. I need to take a point of order. I did not mention agenda item 9.23, which was a supplemental personnel report in the consent agenda. So we need to make a motion and approve that. So is there a motion, please?
I make a motion, we approve 9.23 supplemental personnel report.
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 9.23, the supplemental personnel report, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you. So I am going to be brief. I want to first start by saying congratulations to the class of 2021 and our other students, 8th grade, 6th grade, kindergarten, all of those who move up. Thank you. I mean, I'm proud of you. It's been an amazing year. And I think that as students look back and staff look back, I think that you should be proud of the work that we've done. Families, I think families should be proud of the work that we've done. We have come through something that nobody ever has been through before. And so I think coming through it with successes and lessons learned and strengths that have been gained is huge. And so I know from my family has been forever changed by this last year. And I know many families that have. And so I just really want to thank the countless hours that our staff have put into making this year successful for each and every one of our students. I too, I know people, we heard a lot about the graduation ceremony and things like that. And I know people could be sometimes resistant to change, not knowing what's going to happen. But I've heard so many positive responses from the graduation ceremonies that took place. So I want to thank the staff who put in the thoughtfulness and the input of students and families, and who really did their best to make this experience as best as it could be for our students. I know this year will not ever be forgotten quickly. And so I think as we move forward and look back, what I hope to do is recognize the accomplishments and the benefits and the positives and what we've learned. And so I also want to take the time to thank our team who presented the budget. I too continue to be amazed at the turnaround and the commitment and the work that the district has put forth into making sure that we are in sound financial position moving forward, and that we will continue to be. Thank you for that. Thank you for presenting it in a way that is easy and easy for others to understand. Folks can go back and watch the videos, and I too congratulate the district on a clean audit. I also would like to just encourage everyone. I know our staff worked diligently through last year. I know many district staff members did not get much of a break at all. I know staff weren't able to take vacation to do things they typically would have done as they were preparing for a remote year. And so I hope that this year, although we're not exactly sure what everything's going to look like, I hope that you take time to rest, rejuvenate, spend time doing whatever you like to do, family, traveling, whatever that is. I really hope that you take the time. It's well-deserved. And so I just, again, want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the staff for continuing to support our students. And as this year comes to a close, I am honored to be a part of this district. I'm honored to be serving as a school board member. And so I just really look forward to working together and coming together over the next year with my fellow board directors to finish this year out and to move forward in a positive way for all of our students and our families. So thank you so much. And with that, we are adjourned, and have a wonderful evening and you have a wonderful summer.
Hi, everyone. Happy summer.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.